2024 is not just an election year, it's the election year. Globally, more voters than ever in history will head to the polls. At least 64 countries, representing around 49% of the world population, including India, the US, UK, Russia, Mexico, and the EU, are meant to hold elections, the result of which, for many, will prove consequential for years to come.
According to the ACLED Conflict Index, 50 countries in the world are either currently at war or debilitated by ongoing violence. At the beginning of 2024, 1 out of 6 humans were exposed to armed conflicts in one way or another.
Who blew up Nord Stream?
You for sure.
I was busy that day.
Tonight, Tucker Carlson is out with his highly anticipated interview with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Now, this is Putin's first interview with a Western media figure since Russia invaded Ukraine.
If you want to really see something that's said, take a look at what happened.
Campaigns, gunshots, and blood. The U.S. presidential race has now seen an assassination attempt on the front runner. Donald Trump is safe now, but not without a shot in his right ear.
Hundreds of balloons that floated over the border from North Korea overnight. You see them here, filled with things like trash and animal feces.
훌륭한 차를 선물로 받은 데 대하여 다시금 대통령 동지에게 사의를.
Russian President Vladimir Putin is in North Korea for the first time in 24 years. He's meeting with Kim Jong-un amid mounting international concern about the military cooperation between the two countries.
The Somali government has approved a maritime security pact with Turkey. Turkey has been authorized to build up, train and equip the Somali Navy, and it's not just that. They will also defend Somalia's territorial waters.
Landlocked Ethiopia signed the agreement to gain access to the Red Sea. Somalia has condemned a deal reached between Ethiopia and the breakaway region of Somaliland. In it, Addis Ababa recognizes Somaliland as an independent country.
When on August 27th, 2 Egyptian military planes landed in Somalia's capital, it ruffled feathers 1,000 kilometers away in Addis Ababa. The planes, delivering military aid, marked Egypt's first significant military engagement in Somalia in decades.
Ertriea, Egypt, and Somalia have recently come together in what appears to be a strategic axis that could challenge Ethiopia.
The world stands at the cusp of a transformative shift in global alliances, with the expansion of the BRICS nations into BRICS Plus, the inclusion of 6 new nations: Argentina, Egypt, Ethiopia, Saudi Arabia, Iran, and the United Arab Emirates.
Kenya is shaken by mass demonstrations against proposed tax hikes. Protesters accuse the president of failing to live up to his election promises.
In one of the most monumental political implosions in American history, President Biden has dropped out of the 2024 presidential race.
Vice President Kamala Harris is the Democrats' nominee for president. She's got the votes from Democratic delegates going into the convention, and the party says she's the nominee.
It is now official. CNN projects that Donald Trump has been elected president, defeating Vice President Kamala Harris and making a political comeback unlike any in modern American politics.
In a dramatic shift, US President Joe Biden, backed by other NATO allies like the UK, has given Ukraine the green light to strike back directly on Russian soil. Ukrainian forces have crossed into Russia, targeting the strategic region of Kursk. This marks the first time since the war began that Ukrainian troops have moved beyond their own borders.
Russia has assembled a force of 50,000 soldiers, including around 10,000 from North Korea, to carry out an assault on the Ukrainian positions in the Kursk region.
The world is watching as ceasefire talks begin in Qatar. President Biden hopes the deal will end the threat of an Iranian attack on Israel and lead to a broader peace.
This is a small and dangerous passage in the Red Sea towards the Suez Canal. It's a crucial maritime route where ships from around the world traverse, providing the opportunity for the Houthis to launch attacks when they are within 80 kilometers of a target.
The United States and the UK launching new airstrikes. These are against military positions against the Iran-backed Houthis in Yemen. It's retaliation for what have been a consistent string of attacks on shipping vessels into the Red Sea.
Iran's Mehr news agency says President Ibrahim Raisi and the country's foreign minister have been killed in a helicopter crash.
A day after the ruling of the International Court of Justice telling Israel to stop its Rafah operation, the Israeli military continued its assault on the southern Gaza city. Black smoke billowed over the border in Gaza on Saturday as Israel continued its onslaught in Rafah.
The man Israel had been hunting for more than a year has been killed. Yahya Sinwar's assassination is a milestone. The images and narratives reveal a stark distinction between myth and reality.
Breaking overnight, the Israeli military has eliminated its most powerful target yet. Israel says longtime Hezbollah chief Hassan Nasrallah was killed in an airstrike in Beirut. Hezbollah is now confirming that Nasrallah was killed.
A series of attacks on Mawasi area in southern Gaza, with Israeli warplanes bombing a so-called safe zone, an area where the Israeli military had ordered Palestinians to go. An area it said was an evacuation zone away from the ongoing strikes.
Israel blew up 2,800 Hezbollah terrorists today. You can see some of the video by selling the Iranian-backed group pagers with explosives hidden inside.
Hezbollah reportedly ordered around 5,000 pagers from Taiwan, a country known for producing about 90% of the world's most advanced semiconductors. These pagers were destined for Lebanon.
While Israel's airstrikes expanded into the heart of Beirut for the first time in nearly 20 years, much of the focus Monday was on the possibility of troops on the ground, Israeli special forces launching probing missions.
Whether it's defense or offense, there is nowhere that Israel will not reach.
Ballistic missiles fired by Iran streaked over the sky on their way to Israel on Tuesday. Retaliation for Israel's campaign against Tehran's Hezbollah allies in Lebanon.
Deeply concerning. That's how U.S. officials are describing the leak of highly classified intelligence documents detailing Israel's preparations for an attack on Iran.
Israel is striking back on Iran this evening following an attack from Tehran earlier this month. They had vowed to respond and retaliate. We are now seeing that happen.
In a major policy shift, President Biden is allowing Ukraine to use U.S. supply long-range weapons to strike deep inside Russian territory.
Ukraine fired long-range missiles provided by the US into Russia, hitting an ammunition storage facility near the Russian city of Karachev. The attack, 75 miles from the border with Ukraine, is the first such assault to use long-range, NATO-made arms.
On March 22nd, armed men burst into this concert hall near Moscow, killing at least 137 people and wounding more than 180 in one of the deadliest attacks in Russia.
Now let's turn our attention to New Zealand, where chaos erupted in the parliament after a bill was proposed. It was followed by fiery debates, insults, and a haka.
The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has just announced the firing of his Minister of Defense, Yoav Gallant.
Axios reporting that Netanyahu's home in the coastal town of Ertriea was hit by an explosive drone launched from Lebanon by the terror group just days after Israel killed Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar. The International Criminal Court now issuing arrest warrants on Thursday for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, his former defense minister, and Hamas officials, accusing them of war crimes and crimes against humanity over the war in Gaza.
South Korea has been hit with the shocking announcement of the introduction of martial law, which was lifted a few hours later.
A sprawling civil war that has destroyed cities, killed a bare minimum of 13,000 and displaced more people than any other conflict on Earth. Right now, the list of nations being dragged into Sudan's proxy war is spectacular. Iran, Russia, the United Arab Emirates, Ukraine, Ethiopia, Egypt, Saudi Arabia. All these countries and more are vying for power on Sudan's battlefields. Who succeeds could determine the course of geopolitics for decades to come.
At a recent airshow in China, engineers from the nation unveiled a sixth-generation aerospace fighter jet for the first time in history. Named Baidi, or White Emperor, this cutting-edge aircraft is a product of the Aviation Industry Corporation of China and is designed to function as a comprehensive aerospace fighter.
China's display of military might surge to new heights on Monday as Taiwan raised its alert levels, warning of Beijing's largest naval and air maneuvers across the region's waters.
A historic moment in Syria. More than 50 years after first taking power, the Assad family regime has been ousted by rebel forces in the capital city of Damascus. Russia's state media announced Sunday evening that the president and his family arrived in Moscow after being granted asylum in Russia.
A new rebellion is growing in Ethiopia. In the Amhara region, a militia known as Fano seized towns, cities, and even an airport in early August.
On a momentous Sunday, Ethiopian state media chronicled a historic event. Oromia Regional State President Shimelis Abdisa and Yael Segni Nagasa, a prominent figure within the Oromo Liberation Army, signed a peace agreement in Addis Ababa.
The Ethiopian government has just secured a loan from the International Monetary Fund, or the IMF. Ethiopia is getting a bailout to help stabilize its economy. They will receive $3.4 billion from the IMF. Yesterday, the country's central bank released a statement. It announced a major revision of Ethiopia's exchange rate system. Up until yesterday, they had a fixed exchange rate. Their currency, the Ethiopian birr, would trade at a fixed rate. But yesterday, this fixed rate was scrapped with immediate effect. Do you know what happened then? Their currency crashed.
As Russia and Iran deepen their alliance, Moscow has launched 2 Iranian satellites into orbit aboard a Soyuz rocket from the Vostochny Cosmodrome in Russia's Far East.
After 8 months of intense diplomatic efforts initiated by Turkey, leaders Abiy Ahmed and Hassan Sheikh Mahmoud shake hands and sign a landmark agreement aimed at resolving their long-standing dispute over Ethiopia's growing ties with Somaliland.
It's resolved in the affirmative.
Tonight, Australia taking an unprecedented step, becoming the first country in the world to ban the use of social media apps for anyone under the age of 16.
Turning now to Venezuela, where violent protests have erupted over allegations that Sunday's presidential election was stolen by the country's authoritarian leader, Nicolas Maduro.
The U.S.-China trade war has just shaken the global tech industry as China confirms its ban on the export of gallium, antimony, and germanium to the United States, critical minerals for semiconductor production.
The dollar, the last known superpower of the US, is coming to an end. Today, US dollars represent about 60% of the value of all the currencies in the entire world. But that trend is also changing.
The dollar looks like they're dumping it.
The world's largest oil producer, Saudi Arabia, is reportedly asking to join BRICS.
As more and more developing nations, including some of the world's largest economies, decide to ditch the dollar in their bilateral trade, voices of concern and even despair are being heard in the US over the looming end of America's global financial dominance.
Now, we look at whether the dollar is losing its global dominance. International Monetary Fund's data reveals that US dollar's dominance as the world's primary reserve currency is slowly eroding. While it remains the most widely held reserve currency, the share has been declining for the past 2 decades, and this trend continues despite recent strength in the dollar itself.
Recently, it was reported that a 50-year deal between the United States and Saudi Arabia to price oil only in US dollars had not been renewed, leading to speculation that the age of the petrodollar is over.
Fake news.
Fake news.
Yeah.
Now, it appears this was fake news, but that doesn't mean nothing happened.
Deep in the jungles of Myanmar, a brutal civil war is raging. On the one side is a military dictatorship, a cabal of generals that took control of their nation years ago and have carried out countless atrocities against the people they swore to safeguard. Their leader, General Min Aung Hlaing, vows gruesome retribution against those who dare to oppose him and relies on the world's ignorance of his nation to rule as he pleases. On the other side is nothing short of a rebel alliance, a collection of resistance armies, insurgent militias, and ordinary people taking up arms in defense of their families and communities. The tip of their spear, a tripartite rebel army known as the Three Brotherhood Alliance, has taken much of the country by storm.
In the aftermath of Sheikh Hasina Wajid's departure from power in Bangladesh, the country's political and diplomatic landscape has undergone a significant transformation. No longer bound by the close ties with India that defined Hasina's tenure, as part of this shift, discussions around strengthening ties with Pakistan have gained momentum, with one proposal standing out as particularly bold: a nuclear treaty between Bangladesh and Pakistan.
This afternoon, I'm laying out my plan to ensure that the United States will be the crypto capital of the planet and the Bitcoin superpower of the world.
Vladimir Putin, who was once a vocal Bitcoin skeptic, now calls it unstoppable. His shift comes as Russia embraces crypto-friendly reforms, recognizing digital assets as property that cannot be seized.
The nation-state Bitcoin arms race may be heating up. As talks of the U.S. Strategic Bitcoin Reserve intensify, rumors swirl that the United Arab Emirates have already amassed 300,000 Bitcoin, which would put them as global leaders ahead of the United States. Plus, Bitwise CIO says the implementation of a U.S. Strategic Reserve would rocket the Bitcoin price upwards of $500,000 per coin in 2025. But would a U.S. stockpile of Bitcoin help pull the country out of debt and strengthen the dollar? Or would it signal a risk to U.S. dollar dominance and shake confidence in markets globally?
As the Russia-Ukraine war and the West Asia conflict rage, revenues from the global arms industry increased to $632 billion in 2023, a 4.2% surge compared to 2022. This is according to a report by the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, SIPRI.
It's now been just over a year since Argentinian President Javier Milei took office, and, well, things are going pretty great for him. He successfully flipped both Argentina's trade and fiscal deficits, allowing Argentina to run consecutive primary surpluses for the first time in ages. Inflation has come down from its heady highs, allowing the central bank to finally cut interest rates and hopefully paving the way for the V-shaped recovery that Milei has long promised.
Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy are ready to take on Washington, D.C. with their new Department of Government Energy, DOGE, and they just outlined their actual plan.
NATO is holding its largest ever artillery exercise in Europe. 5,000 troops have gathered along the alliance's eastern flank. The bloc's newest member, Finland, is hosting some of those troops in its far north.
On November 21st, Russia struck Ukraine's Dnipro with a new kind of missile, known as a Reshaped or hazel tree in Russia, but the first combat use of such a design, which Russian President Vladimir Putin called unstoppable, has drawn scrutiny from Western military experts.
They're everywhere.
Tonight, growing calls for action over the mysterious objects being reported in the skies over New Jersey and New York.
There's another one over there.
An FBI official says they've received thousands of reports over the past few weeks, with less than 100 of those warranting further investigation. But whatever it is people are seeing, local lawmakers want answers.
We also know that we have drones that are flying in a grid-like pattern. In my opinion, they're looking for something. What might they be looking for? Well, potentially, we're aware of a threat that came in through Port Newark. Maybe that's radioactive material. There was and there is an alert that's out right now that radioactive material in New Jersey has gone missing.
Шансов никаких нет для того, чтобы сбить эти ракеты. Ну, а если вот те эксперты западные, про которых вы сказали, так полагают, пусть они предложат нам и пусть предложат тем на Западе и в США, кто им платит за их анализ, произвести некий такой технологический эксперимент. Ну, скажем...